Yes, Paul. Everything's muted at the moment. If you guys do have any questions throughout, just pop something into the chat. And as I mentioned to everyone at the start, if you weren't already in the group, I'll raise the questions with T just at the next opportunities, just so that we're not all like interrupting him and messing up his flow whilst he's talking through. I think as well, we can probably make a start, and then if anyone else joins, I'll just message into the chat and let them know the sort of rules with it all.
Okay, cool.
T is going to talk through his track Be Alone, which came out on his record label about a year ago, just before everything fell apart with the pandemic. He's basically going to show us this side of the project, which he's got open now. Anthony, no sound. Hold on. Have you checked the audio settings? Bottom. Yeah, he's going to take us through this, which is like his arrangement and his synths and drums and everything, and how he's chosen his sounds. And then he'll go into the other project, which is where he's done his mix down, which is going to be more like setting the levels and more of the effects routing and stuff like that. So I think this is quite a good way, and a lot of producers work in this way, where it separates the creative side with the more technical side and gives you a bit of a break between it. So yes, Emil, awesome. Well, I'll let T introduce himself now and we can make a start. And
All
yeah,
right.
if anyone does have any questions, just pop them into the chat box.
All right, guys. Welcome on board. Hope everyone is well and the rest of it, and everyone's doing good. So just to give you guys a little touch of a background knowledge on myself here, obviously, for anyone that doesn't actually know me, you know, I'm not going to presume everyone does. My name's Tesfa. My actual real name's Tesfa. I go by the name of T. Williams. I've come through on a journey that started off with me making grime music and has culminated with me making like house and kind of like this kind of bass-led, kind of like stripped-back house music on a number of different labels such as PMR, Strictly Rhythm, Madhouse, and a few others. And obviously, namely my own, which with this track came out on TTR White, which is Today Tomorrow Records White. So today, I'm basically going to talk about this track. The reason why I picked this actual song or this track to kind of like go through, I wanted to just do something that kind of touched on the moment just before we went. Obviously, everything went to lockdown and everything started to change, and kind of go back to that moment where we were like kind of where I was actually producing club music and stuff that like really was made just solely basically for the club. So just to look at my project here quickly, it's a bit untidy as I always kind of like start off with a project that is just about the ideas and keeping it that way, just throwing things in as I can and kind of like trying to create a vibe. So if I'm going to start off, I will start off with just kind of like talking about the drums in itself, and then we'll move on from there, you know, kind of bass and the rest of it, and kind of start to break this down. So
Is that somewhere you typically start? You usually start with the drums when
100%. So I always start from drums. Literally, when I'm making club music, I usually start off with like a some kind of break, some kind of sample that I'll either chop up, or even just it might even be just like a snare that I find to be like sounding good, you know, or a kick drum that I really think, oh, this is dope, and I'll just try to like throw it in and see what I can kind of like work around with that. So usually I'll even have ideas of like drum loops from prior, and just kind of like on a day like load it up and just jam on those drum loops on the day. But I always start off with a basis of with drums. So if I'm gonna play through here. I remember correctly, with this track in particular, I kind of started off with this up here, this Action Orange Kush break. I'll go back to the beginning. I'm just going to duplicate it out so we can actually have a listen quickly.
Yeah, I've muted it now.
Okay, fantastic. All right. So this is the break that I started out with. You need to so, as you can hear, like, it's, I guess, you know, it's like a hip hop break anyways. Like, and I've got a whole folder full of like different breaks that I'm always like messing with, just like, you know, classic breaks. Some of them are like a bit off piece. This one's like it's just a classic break anyways. And yeah, just kind of like got a vibe and was like straight off the mark. Took that as a kind of like bass for the drums. Then I guess I can kind of build up in here from that. All right, again, even with this clap, this clap here is taken from a loop that I've actually cut. Again, just particularly, I particularly like the clap in itself. It's like a nice tight clap. I was like, yep, that's perfect for me. Again, what have we got going on? So, just to start off with, I already had a project with this break, was where I used this break in that I had the whole break kind of like stretched out. And what I did is I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to take 2 beats of that and kind of like condense it and get that loop kind of like rolling around. And I often do this. I often kind of like make whole loops with the break and then really like shorten them up just to see what happens, just to see if it sounds any good. And with this one in particular, I really felt like this kind of like galloping kind of like loop with the drums kind of like felt absolutely right. So again, using breaks kind of like building up. So even in this section here, how I would have processed those loops as well is that I've got a whole folder of loops that I put into Apple Loops as well on the side. These aren't my ones because this is not my computer, but unfortunately, but usually I would load them up into here and be able to audition them whilst I'm going around and kind of drag and drop and throw things in as I'm playing around with drums. So again, tops here, a full loop kind of loop out. And then adding back in the break. So the whole process of this, the reason why I usually start off and kind of like to add an original break in there is just for texture and to fill things out and to give it that kind of like original raw feel. Like I always use breaks in my tracks, in my drums, so on and so forth. Like it's always there. And then if I move on, I used Ultrabeat, the 909 boutique on Ultrabeat, to just kind of sequence in just a basic like 909 house like drum loop. So if I turn this on, pretty basic 909 drum loop going on there. What I like to do as well is add some saturation to it. If you guys can see here, it's just a saturation knob by Softube. This one is actually absolutely free. You can download it now if you want. It's whatever that's there for anyone who wants to download it. But again, it just adds a layer of grit to like those 909s and gives it that kind of like raw, like kind of like old school feel. So if I take this off and just audition for you guys, the 909 Boutique, kind of like, it's cool, it's nice. If I add back into, just give it a bit more crunch, a bit more grit to it. Again, helping build the track along, helping build the flow. All together, that is basically the basis of the drum for the track. If I fast forward a bit more, over here. Now, this, along here, I've now got added in a ride cymbal that was I already used in a previous track which I released on Strictly Rhythm called The Learning Process, and I always just kind of like add it in every now and again, like just to mess with it. So again, if I go in the studio and I make stuff that with anybody, that drums that I really feel are like on point or nice, whatever, there's a high chance that I'm gonna like reuse it again on another track. That be like the cymbals, snares, hi-hats, whatever it is. If I think it's cool, I'm gonna keep going back around to it. So in this track, I think I've used just the ride out of The Learning Process, and I think if I'm correct, if I go back down, I think that is as far as I went. Oh, we've got some more hats along here. I did mention that the project is kind of messy because it's like my ideas project. Again, so let me just go down here. Right, so again, another loop added in to fill out extra as well. All right, so another thing that I would like to touch on, if I can just stop this shit and share my mixer with you guys, just quickly. So if I share my mixer with you guys, and another thing I'd just like to touch on is just the EQing that I attempt to do to kind of fit everything in and fit the drums around each other. So here, as you can see, this is the break. I've done like a low cut here, just to kind of like tidily fit into the actual mix of the track. Also, I'm trying to think what else is there kind of interesting here. Maybe these hats, I've kind of like EQ'd them out. Again, I just do this all by ear to kind of try and fill a space within the track. If I'm adding something, if I'm adding another layer or another loop, I'm always adding it to try and fill out a space within it. This also happens certain times as well where I'll be filling out the layers and so on and so forth, and I've got too much in there, and then I start to reduce and come back, which is where you would see like certain things on my track where there's things muted out, even on this ideas page, like that I'm reducing things. I've thrown things in and then I start to reduce and take things back from there. Let me have another look. So even here, what's this? This is the clap again. So slight boost here as well. In the EQ, what we've got here, we've got another little loop with a kick loop. Again, high pass there. I'm trying to think what we've got here. So these are all along the bottom here. These are all loops, apart from the clap in there. Then the Boutique, the 909 Boutique, everything kind of like left alone in there because he's not playing. But then if I come along here, I'm pretty certain that this is the kick. Just stop it.
So where you've got like a kick, a clap, and your hats, have you separated them onto 3 separate channels so you can EQ them differently?
Exactly. So these are all still the Ultra Beats, but they've been separated out. So I would have played with the idea on this one channel here with Ultra Beat and kind of like in the sequencer and kind of like just penciling things in and obviously just seeing if it just sounds cool. That just the straight house beat, you know, straight 4 on the floor like beat, or if I could have done something more interesting or cool and kind of like mixed it up. And when I got to the point where I thought, okay, this is cool, I would have dragged and dropped it in and then separated them out. So I got them all separate on separate tracks. So this is going to be, so I guess this will be the kick here. Okay, kick. Yeah. I'm trying to think. Oh, nothing muted out. What's going on? Let's see. So. Okay, so that's the low cut, like full drums all together. And then what we got here, is there anything going? No, nothing on that. Okay. So all in all, as I mentioned earlier, like basically with the drums, I'm really just trying to sculpt a full drum loop from loads of different loops and hits. And within that, I'm trying to like, I also use the EQs to try to fit things into different places and spaces on the track. So if we move on from the drums and kind of, I guess let's touch on what I've got in the synth kind of like melody placement here. Really nothing much going on crazy, but just to mention, as I said before, kind of like sometimes less is more in these scenarios, and this is where I was at in this moment, was to kind of like try to make something really stripped back, really straight to the point for the club. So I've got so once again, literally using the XS24, and I've loaded like some piano shot chords into that. Let's see. Just classic sounding. Again, picking like, for me, picking like the premium sound is kind of like really where you're gonna shine out in any start. And these piano sounds, it just works every single time. So I have got a 1 layer here, which I'm guessing is going to be high, and then I would have added in a lower layer. And then a string sound, which is a sample, which is just a layer. It's just, again, just from my sample packs that I've got, this is just like a string layer that I would add in. I'm trying to think if I've put it down, if I've used anything along here. No. Yeah, just kind of like a drag and drop situation into there to build tension into the break. So with regards to like either synths or anything like that, there isn't like a lot on this track. And again, I've used like kind of the stock what's on Logic to kind of get something cool. If I want to talk about what have I done with this? Okay, so let's go to the mixer quickly and take a quick look at what's going on with the processing of those piano shots.
do you find that sometimes by like not going crazy and using like loads of different synths and just sticking to like what the basics in Logic are, it sort of focuses you a bit more on like getting the ideas tight?
100%. So ultimately, like I have to go back and kind of I always go back and use similar sounds. So the point is, if I've got the template of things that like I really enjoy, I can always just focus purely on the creative side of things rather than kind of like going around the houses and really trying to like, pick things. But that's again the kind of like point of like the pre-production. So doing the pre-production, making sure that your samples are all in order, making sure all your synths are all in order. You've got your favorites like ready to hand, so on and so forth. Those are all things that I've obviously done over the years and have cultivated them over the years within Logic, to make it much easier for myself just to create rather than kind of like faffing around with something that I don't know. Do you know what I mean? In the process, the same goes for, I guess, even using. I think I've used on this. All right, so we've got keys here. So yeah, I've used H delay, which is a wicked go-to for delay on with waves. If anyone's got it as well. So let's go back through this. Yeah. H delay on 5 and then on so Space Designer on bus number 1 as well, and that's just the mix. That's basically the mixture that I've got for those piano sounds, and also I have here a bit of stereo spread going on as well, just to make it a little bit wider.
And you've got that reverb, using the same reverb on the different sounds as well.
Yeah, I've got it running throughout the track. So basically, throughout the track, it's basically H delay and the Space Designer that is on the buses that I've got. So yeah, a little bit on these piano sounds here, yeah, and the vocals as well.
And that makes it a lot more cohesive than having like different ones set up on individual channels, doesn't it?
Exactly. So let me just head back to my screen. All right. So let's just touch on the bass now, quickly as well. So the bass I have, for the bass I've used the ES2, which is one of my faves. Again, I spoke about kind of like production like processes. This is a sound that I've kind of like made and used myself on and used on other tracks. It is made from the Sine. So from the bass, and where is it? It's from the Sine bass, which is just an ES2 setting. So it's just that there. But on top of that, if you look on the channel, I've added a bit of saturation to it with the saturation knob from Softube. And then I would have played with like the ADSR as well, and just how that works. Also, I would have played with the glide as well here to kind of get the sound that I wanted for the bass. Obviously, I'll play it for you guys so you can actually hear. Okay, so now that effect is achieved by just adding in additional notes an octave higher. And that's how I've kind of got that kind of like glidey sound throughout the track. So you can see it, sorry. Let you see, you can't see it. And so I kind of sat back and I can tell you guys that for instance that I sat and I kind of played with it for a while. Do you know what I mean? Seeing what I felt sounded cool, what I felt it was like at times I was probably going a bit too OTT and making those glides a little bit too long. But in the end, I got there and got to where I wanted with the glides. I also was playing with like the kind of release. So yeah, like I kind of sat down and kind of like just was like, you know, what do I want to achieve? Because in the beginning, I did have the release quite high and the glide quite high as well, but I kind of stripped it back because I wanted it to still kind of like feel like it was more of a house track rather than kind of like a real bass house track in that particular. But again, nothing absolutely phenomenal going on there. It's just kind of like straight to the point. Less is more. Kind of like hitting. I did do maybe several different versions of what the bass melody might be, which is normally common for me to kind of like just muck around. Again, like I said, once I've got my drums, I can always add a bass and kind of like be like and change it around and be like, okay, well this works, this doesn't work, and I felt like this one was the fitting one, and I kind of just rolled with it. So all of that being said, and I've now got like, you know, my bass, a nice little piano chord for the breakdown with some string layers, and obviously all my drums all layered up from the 909 to the loops and to the break that I put in there as well. Obviously then I wanted to add like, you know, an element that would be memorable for people to kind of like walk away with. And for that, I kind of went for an Aaliyah vocal, which, if I've got it here, let's see if I can play it.
When we hooked up, we sat down, made an agreement. We vowed that we'd always be together, do whatever. We said that no one would ever be between us. So love will never, ever leave us. That was a while ago, but now lately.
So that's the sample that I kind of like, the acapella that I took the sample from. And in this case, I've got a few bits and bobs that I took out that I've chopped up. So if we go down here, take a quick goosey gander. So
I don't wanna.
And that's the main part of the groove, like with the vocals. Obviously, I've taken little chops of what's there, and as you can hear, I've also added a channel. So I think this is all running through bus 3. So if I go back to my mixer, all right. So yeah. So let me just show you guys quickly what's on bus 3. Headed back to the mixer. All right, so bus 3, as in vocals, again, we've got what, 4. So we've got the H delay being used on bus 3 with a space, so reverb, and then also Waves vocal rider as well to level everything out, which is my limiter on there. And that's it, just a bit of air candy, just something to kind of keep people locked in to the track. And again, I kind of knew the type of vocal that I wanted. Aaliyah's kind of like an easy go-to as well for any track, to be fair, if I'm honest with you guys. It's just her vocal kind of like fits and sits like very well as a sample. So again, use that as the bed for that kind of like the vocal hook for people to be drawn into it as a bass. So we've got like the hard bass hitting bass, and then we've got this nice like Aaliyah vocal over here as well, kind of like rolling.
Did the vocal need any pitching to be in key with the bass and like the piano bits, or?
Do you know how it goes? Basically, so when I started this track, I knew that I was starting the track in it was in D minor. So I already knew what the key was. So I already knew that that vocal was in D minor. So that vocal is already in key. But normally I could actually go through that process of kind of like finding something and pitching it up or pitching it down. But with this one, I didn't need to. It was just tempo that I needed to kind of like time stretch it or move it around with regards to that. If we go here and then, yeah, we move on and we can just get into some effects here, some just that, again, some real air candy, like just to kind of like keep things flowing. I've got the crash, which as I said to you guys before, this crash here in particular, I've used on another track, The Learning Process, just works. And I've got another layer for this crash as well, which is a lower layer, which has got a bigger kind of reverb tail to it. So one's got the delay on it, and then one's just got the reverb on it, and they layered up. And then these are all just kind of like, again, from my sample packs that I've like picked from, these are all things that I've kind of like just got like, and just feel like work within tracks. So I will pick and then layer as to fit. As you can see, for risers, I've got like 3 risers working together in tandem here. Just go back to that quickly. Again, some space designer on that. And again, reverb on this one as well. Pretty straightforward when it comes to this stuff in the kind of like idea stage, and just keeping things kind of flowing. Only thing left to kind of like touch on now would be the last bit during the break that I'm not sure anyone can really hear it, but like for me, it felt like it needed it. It was just like a kind of like some kind of like atmospheric kind of like extra. And this is like something that I just sampled from YouTube, to be honest. And it's just like white noise waves, soothing sound. So yeah, what's this? Ocean waves, relaxation, 10 hours, soothing waves crashing on the beach. That's the YouTube. If anyone actually wants to take that as a bed for it. But again, I just used it to kind of like help the break along. So, in all honesty, that is pretty much the kind of like the nuts and bolts of that track Be Alone. Again, the reason why I picked this one to kind of like run through today was to show like the simplicity of the track itself, and kind of like talk about kind of like picking like either pre-production and picking like prime sounds, so that you're ready to create. And when you get to a point where you're ready to be creative, you've got the sounds ready to kind of like throw in and kind of like work around in that moment. So with that said, I kind of want to move on to like just be able to touch on the mix page, if I can.